Imagine this. You're in a relationship that doesn't just involve you, it consumes you. At times, it feels like a lightning strike to the soul, passion, chemistry, intensity, the kind of love that makes movies jealous. But then, the same hands that once held you with warmth now feel like weapons. The same voice that once whispered love now cuts like a blade. And when you try to breathe, to reclaim your space, you're made to feel like you've betrayed something sacred. And yet, you stay. Not because you're weak. Not because you don't know better. But because something deep inside whispers that this chaos might be love, that maybe, just maybe, this pain is the price for something extraordinary. But here's the truth. Most toxic relationships don't arrive like hurricanes. They sneak in like gentle rain. They start with affection, attention, promises that feel divine. And then, almost without noticing, that affection becomes control, care becomes surveillance, and love becomes emotional captivity. You don't see it clearly. You just feel like you're always in debt. As if being loved means constantly shrinking yourself. Maybe you've lived this. Or maybe you've watched someone drown in it, justifying the pain with words like, "He's just like that because he loves me so much. She's just scared. It's not her fault." But the truth? You're just trying to survive. In these relationships, a simple desire for silence becomes betrayal. A small boundary becomes ammunition. A no turns into emotional blackmail, the cold shoulder, passive aggression, explosive rage. And the most dangerous part? You start to doubt your own sanity. Am I overreacting? Maybe it's my fault. Maybe I'm too sensitive. This, right here, is one of the most lethal poisons of a toxic relationship. It rewires your reality. It infects your self-worth. It convinces you that love is supposed to hurt. But love isn't supposed to suffocate. This video is not about blame. It's not an attack. It's an invitation to awaken. To see clearly what you once thought was love, but might actually be the slow destruction of your emotional well-being. Today, we'll walk through 7 psychological signs, drawn from the insights of Carl Jung, Freud, Fromm, and countless others who dared to expose the shadows beneath human connection. You won't find cliché advice here. What you'll find are painful truths, but liberating ones. Because the first step to healing is seeing. Let's begin. Sign 1: you mistake intensity for love. Some of the most toxic relationships feel impossible to leave. Not because they lack emotion, but because they're full of it. Almost too full. The passion. The volatility. The makeup after the meltdown. The jealousy that seems to mean, I care. It's addictive. Like a drug. And every emotional high feels like a reward. Every low? A test. But here's the trap. Intensity is not love. It's imbalance. Freud called this the compulsion to repeat, the way we unconsciously seek out relationships that mirror our childhood trauma. If love in your early life was unpredictable, if safety and chaos walked hand in hand, your nervous system learned something dangerous. That love must hurt to be real. That doubt means depth. That the higher the emotional stakes, the more meaningful the connection. So when you meet someone whose energy feels like a storm, you don't run. You feel at home. Erich Fromm called this symbiotic love, 2 people fusing into a false unity, not out of wholeness, but out of unhealed wounds. You become addicted not to love, but to emotional adrenaline. Fights. Reconciliations. Passion. Coldness. Repeat. Your brain releases dopamine in these cycles of pain and relief, and over time, the chaos feels like connection. You start to think love is supposed to throw you off balance. But it isn't. Real love grounds you. It builds you. The cruel irony? The more intense the relationship, the more convinced you are that it's rare, even sacred. But in truth, it's often just familiar pain, wearing the mask of something holy. Sign 2, you're trying to save them. And then comes the next illusion, maybe the most seductive of all. I can fix them. If I love them enough, they'll change. If I'm patient enough, they'll see how much they're hurting me, and stop. The relationship stops being a partnership. It becomes a mission. A personal project to redeem someone who is drowning, and pulling you under with them. This is not just heartbreak. This is self-abandonment dressed as compassion. Carl Jung described this dynamic with piercing accuracy: projection. What you refuse to face in yourself, the fear, the wounds, the anger, you unconsciously project onto the other. You try to heal them because it's safer than healing yourself. If you deny your own insecurity, you'll be drawn to insecure people you want to strengthen. If you suppress your rage, you'll find someone explosive, and try to calm them. You become the emotional caretaker of someone else's shadow, while your own shadow grows hungrier. Fromm called this neurotic love. Where love is not free, it must be earned. It must be proved. It must be paid for, in suffering. You think this is love. But what it really is a spiritual exhaustion. And the deeper you go, the more you forget who you are. You become the healer. The helper. The emotional crutch. But inside, you're bleeding. And one day you look in the mirror, and ask, who am I, if I'm not trying to save them? Sign 3, you're losing yourself. At first, you still remember who you were. You had opinions. Passions. Dreams. But slowly, subtly, it all fades. What do you want? I don't know. What do you feel? Nothing, really. What do you need? It depends on them. This is what Jung warned us about, the loss of the self in a false connection. You don't lose yourself in one moment. You stop saying what you really think. You dress differently to avoid comments. You silence your emotions to keep the peace. You give up your hobbies, your friendships, your voice, all to avoid another fight. Erich Fromm called this symbiotic fusion, where I dissolves into us, and the other person becomes your emotional compass. Freud saw it as ego repression. You edit yourself out of fear. You walk on eggshells. You manage their moods. You predict their reactions. Until you are no longer in the equation. And the tragedy? It doesn't always hurt. Sometimes it just feels like emptiness. Like drifting. Like forgetting. And when you finally try to draw a boundary, to ask for space, guilt rises in your throat like fire. You feel like the villain. Just for wanting your soul back. You become always available. Always present. Always alert. Not because love demands it, but because fear commands it. Behind this quiet obedience lives a haunting belief. To love is to erase myself. But pause, what if the weight you're carrying isn't even yours? What if you're not responsible for another person's emotional survival? What if the guilt you've been nursing isn't a reflection of your love, but a weapon slowly turned inward? This is how emotional responsibility is distorted in toxic love. You've imagined leaving. You've mentally packed your things, rehearsed conversations, glimpsed freedom. But something invisible stops you. Something deeper than loneliness. Their pain. Their sorrow becomes your shackle. Not because they asked, but because you decided, silently, that you must save them. You say, they've suffered too much, they didn't mean to hurt me, I can't leave them like this. You take on their trauma like armor, forgetting it doesn't belong to you. And when they show fragility, when they threaten to collapse, you become more entrenched. You think your presence is the only thread holding them together. But ask yourself, is this compassion, or captivity? Carl Jung warned of this archetype, the martyr who loses himself while trying to heal someone who never asked to be saved. It feels noble. It feels selfless. But it's actually a disconnection from your own worth. As Fromm explained, this is not love, it's neurosis. You're not there because of choice. You're there because of need. Because pain has become familiar. Because your identity is now woven into being someone else's emotional scaffolding. And without noticing, the tears and breakdowns and collapses become currency. Every emotional implosion convinces you to stay a little longer. Just one more chance. But here's the truth you've been avoiding. You cannot rescue someone who is committed to drowning. And your staying isn't saving them, it's only delaying your own collapse. Worse still, deep in this chaos, something strangely familiar stirs. It's not just about them, it's about you. You've lived this before. And not just in this relationship. It echoes like a ghost. You start to realize you've played this role before, different faces, same script. Over and over again. You keep choosing people who trigger the same pain. Why? Because your inner child still believes that maybe, just maybe, this time the ending will be different. Freud called it the compulsion to repeat. The unconscious drive to recreate the emotional trauma of your past, so that, this time, you can rewrite the ending. But you don't. You just reopen the same wound with new hands. You were abandoned, so you chase the emotionally unavailable. You were never enough, so you try to earn love from someone who withholds it. You were unseen, so you overextend yourself for someone who won't look. This is not fate. It's familiar pain disguised as love. And each time you try to fix it, to heal it through someone else, you lose another piece of yourself. Eventually, the pain feels like home. And the scariest thing isn't the suffering anymore, it's the silence that would come without it. You don't know who you'd be if you left. So you stay. Not out of love, but out of fear. Jung called this the crisis of the fragile ego. When your identity becomes fused to the relationship, walking away feels like death. Not of the connection, but of the self. Because you've forgotten who you are outside of them. Fromm took it even further. Most people don't fall in love, they fall into escape. From themselves. From their loneliness. From the terrifying possibility of facing their own reflection without someone else standing in front of it. This isn't love. It's anesthesia. It numbs you. It disconnects you. And worst of all, it convinces you that this emptiness, this suffering, is all you deserve. But it's not. You were never meant to disappear in love. You were meant to expand. A relationship should not silence your soul. It should help it speak. So instead of asking, "What's wrong with me that I can't make this work?" ask, "Why do I still call this love?" You deserve more. But before you can find it outside, you must awaken it within. Courage isn't walking away without pain. It's walking away despite the pain. It's remembering who you are, even when everything around you tries to make you forget. So now I ask you, which part of this truth struck you the deepest? Which pattern did you recognize, and are now finally ready to break? Write it. Say it. Because sometimes, the first act of liberation is simply naming the thing that's been breaking you. And if this touched something inside you, don't stop here. The next video will take you even further. You've already begun your return. Not just to freedom, but to yourself.